Alright YouTubers, good stuff. Londononion here again with another class review and guide for Defiance 2050. And in this review we're going to be discussing the Guardian class. Now, there is always multiple ways to use a given class, and consequently anything I say is debatable and to be taken with 2 grains of salt. Our main focus will be on the class skills, and how the combination of skills can best benefit the user and their weapon loadout. Alright, so the Guardian is essentially a given team's anchor, and is easily intended to be the toughest of all the classes. The Guardian is the one that takes the bullet, the one that keeps standing when the rest can't, and then keeps going until they are unable to. Anyone who has seen Rocky Balboa can use him as an illustration. So unlike our medic class, the Guardian seems to be polarized into 2 main playstyles. I will coin these playstyles as the turtle and the punching bag. Turtles are the type to be oriented towards endurance and defense. Punching bags are oriented towards mixing defense and redirected offense. Technically, no class is locked into any particular loadout, but for the purpose of consistency, the class build will be constructed with the assumed loadout of any weapon aside from pistols and snipers. As a defenseman, there is little bearing and incentive toward weapon choice, so it really comes down to preference. Now, our first skill is the Mending Barrier. The Mending Barrier essentially puts up a shield for a maximum of 12 seconds that blocks incoming damage and revitalizes the Guardian a percentage of vitality. This can also be changed based on one's synergy levels. Now, this is a perfect answer to enemy fire. However, there seems to be some inconsistency with what the barrier can block. Sometimes enemy fire goes straight through, other times it is blocked. This seems to be the case with explosives, whether they are projectiles or grenades. Additionally, some weapons can be fired from behind the barrier while others, particularly shotguns and explosives, fail to go through the shield. Whether this is a glitch or not is unknown to this onion. So our first tier consists of Health Boost, Energize, and Reflect. Health Boost provides a health buff by a maximum of 7% for 15 seconds upon killing an enemy. This perk can stack up to 5 times, maximizing one's health buff to an additional 35%. This perk flourishes most in the face of weak enemies, as the stat can become maximized in a very short period of time and maintained. Naturally, facing off with tough enemies is where the perk will struggle. Energize decreases refresh time on one's ego abilities by a maximum of 15% every time they take damage, and comes with a low cooldown of 5 seconds. This aids in maximizing the frequency of one's Mending Barrier, as well as other abilities we'll discuss a bit later. The last skill is Reflect, which redirects a maximum of 25% of received damage back to one's foes. This skill can be quite fun, as weak enemies can simply shoot themselves to death. One must, however, be careful not to abuse this perk, as tougher enemies will deal much higher damage, which may not be worth a trade. Skills further down the tree may reduce some of the associated risks though. For those that take on more of a turtle style, they may likely be most enticed by Health Boost, as they theoretically have a consistent health buff as long as there are weak to moderate enemies present. Those who adopt a more punching bag style would be most enticed by Reflect. Meanwhile, anybody that wants to take a more hybrid approach would maximize Energize, as it incentivizes receiving damage to potentially increase one's defenses, such as their Mending Barrier or possibly other skills further down the tree. For those who have seen my other class reviews, they can probably guess that I'm more of a turtle, and therefore would invest in Health Boost. It is however important to note that to take full advantage of Health Boost, one is best off using Rebel Shields. Our first junction of skills consists of Bolster and Taunt. Bolster increases one's total health, shields, and armor by a maximum of 30% while decreasing received critical damage by 50%, and comes with a 35-second cooldown. This is the perfect defense perk if one cannot afford to remain stationary or if one is close to incapacitation. Taunt sends out a signal that causes nearby enemies, up to a maximum of 30 meters, to target the Guardian. In PvP, this perk simply decreases damage by 25% for 5 seconds and comes with a cooldown of 30 seconds. Turtles will of course prefer Bolster, while punching bags would likely favor Taunt. However, punching bags can also use Bolster in tandem with either Energize or Reflect in order to reduce the risk of taking too much damage for their desired effect. As a turtle, I choose Bolster. Now, our second tier of skills consists of Martyr, Rage, and Heavy Hitter. Martyr creates a 9% maximum defense buff upon Mending Barrier activation. The nature of this skill is interesting, since the barrier only covers a small portion of the Guardian's path, leaving their back open to fire. However, a 9% increase in defense seems substantially insignificant for investment. Rage increases one's damage output by a maximum of 15% once one's total health, armor, or shield drops below 50%. This is a reasonable perk to have in the face of enemy onslaught and can be used for both turtles and punching bags. Turtles will have a slightly easier time increasing their health boost perk, while punching bags have an additional offense to their reflective skills. Heavy Hitters grants a 45% maximum damage buff for 5 seconds upon performing a rescue kill, while increasing one's threat by 400 units. This is a more team-based or PvP-based skill and doesn't really capture this onion's interest. Additionally, the skill comes with a 20-second cooldown, which is still relatively low, but so is the duration. I'm not sure how common rescue kills are, but it seems to be more of a niche type perk. For those who choose to go pure turtle, they may prefer Martyr. For this onion, however, Rage seems to be the most reasonable choice and works for both turtles and punching bags. Our next tier consists of Shrug Off, Endurance, and Second Life. Shrug Off decreases the effective range of explosives by a maximum of 45%. Not a bad perk, but I don't think explosives are much of a nuisance unless one is using their Mending Barrier. Endurance grants a defense buff by a maximum of 7% for a 1 second duration. This skill can be stacked 3 times though. Although the duration is very short, the maximized buff is easily achieved as there is no cooldown. Second Life literally gives a Guardian a second chance at remaining on their feet where they would have otherwise fallen. They are instead reduced to 1 hit point and immune to all damage for 5 seconds. When maximized, the perk has a cooldown of 150 seconds. Provided one is not a complete blunder, this is the ultimate contingency perk in the rare event that they should fall despite all other efforts exhausted. For turtle-oriented players, they can essentially choose any one of the perks. The most beneficial perks in this onion's opinion are Endurance and Second Life. Punching bags would value the same perks as well, but with more priority to Endurance. This tier is best split off between Endurance and Second Life. As a Guardian, falling should make up a minority of one's experiences, meaning Second Life should be left with 1 skill point and Endurance with 4 skill points, allowing a 5% defense buff per stack. Our final junction consists of Steadfast and Shockwave. Steadfast decreases one's speed by 25% while increasing their defense by 50% for a maximum of 12 seconds and comes with a 45-second cooldown. This skill is similar to the Bolster perk, and when used together with other turtle perks, makes one a walking fortress pretty much. This should go without saying, but this skill is essentially the last piece of the turtle puzzle. Punching bags, however, can use Steadfast as an option. For Shockwave, this skill sends out a short-range energy wave. that deals heavy damage and stuns enemies in its path for a maximum of 6 seconds and comes with a 30-second cooldown. In PvP, this skill instead slows targets by 50%. The stun pattern on this skill, however, seems to have an inconsistent effect. It seems that Hellbug Monarchs don't really get stunned, but will take the heavy damage. So, there you have it. This Onion's Guardian build. For those that got lost in this review, there seems to be 2 main playstyles with the Guardian. The Turtle and the Punching Bag. Turtles have more of a defensive orientation, while punching bags have a mixture of defense and offense. For Turtles, their skills are Health Boost over Energizer, Bolster, Rage over Martyr, Endurance 4 out of 5, Second Life 1 out of 5, and Steadfast. The Punching Bag skill set is Reflect over Energizer, Taunt, Rage over Heavy Hitter, Endurance 4 out of 5, Second Life 1 out of 5, and Shockwave over Steadfast. So, moving into this Onion's opinion, I thoroughly enjoy the Guardian class, as it is a close manifestation of how I like to build my classes, minimizing my chances of going down, which is essentially what this class is all about. The class tree is very nicely constructed, in that there are many different ways one can build their tree that go beyond the playstyles outlined in this review. Additionally, the compounding effects of the skills are what make experimenting with the perks engaging and fun. As a Guardian, the class lives up to its name. It is easily the toughest class in the bunch, and all of the skills reflect that. There are only 2 issues I have with the class, and they aren't too major, but worth noting. As discussed closer to the beginning of this review, the mending barrier seems to have an inconsistent effect. Some enemy projectiles go through the barrier and others don't, which can be very frustrating when one is expecting safety behind their barrier, only to be incapacitated due to a misleading effect. The second issue is the Shockwave stun effect. It does not seem to work on Hellbug Monarchs, at least not consistently in my experience. This is not the first time the stun effect seems to fail on these enemies. Those that have seen my engineer review would understand what I'm referring to. Otherwise, the Guardian class is easily a pass in this Onion's book. So, that concludes the review. Thank you so much for watching, and you can continue on with your life.